Our final speaker, before we go into Q&A, is Rupert Reed. Rupert is co-director of the Climate Majority Project and Emeritus Professor of Philosophy at the University of East Anglia. He is the author of several books, including This Civilization is Finished, which in fact I got for Christmas last year, and Parents for a Future, Why Climate Breakdown Matters, and Do You Want to Know the Truth? The Surprising Rewards of Climate Honesty. Rupert, the floor is yours.
You mean the world? The whole world is vulnerable to this? This is truly a global emergency? Yep, that's about what we mean. That's about the size of it. And given you've decided to come here tonight, you may well already be aware of this, but colleagues, I have to tell you, the situation is pretty grim. We've just had a climate denier elected president of the United States. We've just had an autumn of absolutely unprecedented worldwide flooding events, which is still going on. We are in really, really serious trouble. We are deep in the age of consequences. A key consequence of this, which I want to offer you here this evening, is it is no longer possible to think about this crisis from the perspective primarily of decarbonization. We have to take seriously climate adaptation. What does climate adaptation mean? It means dealing with our vulnerabilities. It means responding to impacts. It means preparing for future impacts, which are going to go on getting worse forever unless and until we do succeed in decarbonizing. So when you think climate action now, don't just think decarbonization. You've got to always think adaptation as well. You've got to always think about resilience and preparedness. You've got to be aware, for example, as I'm sure many of you are aware, that Guy's and St Thomas's almost shut down during the 40-degree heat wave a couple of years ago because its IT systems and other cooling systems could not take the heat. And we're just getting started here. Sorry, we're just getting started with this crisis. This is not something which is here today, gone tomorrow. This is something which is going to define all of our lives for all of the rest of our lives. And for most of us, possibly all of us, it's going to go on getting worse for all of the rest of our lives. So that's climate honesty. What are the surprising rewards of it? Well, the most important one is if we actually face up to this stuff, we can start to do something about it. There's a more interesting way of thinking about this reward, though, and it's relevant to a lot of you, and it's this. So we have a huge mental health crisis, epidemic, in countries like this one and across the world, especially among the young, but also more generally. And as we enter deeper into the climate crisis, people are going to be subject more and more to climate depression, climate despair, climate anxiety. And these people will need help. And a lot of you come in there. But there's something very important to understand and to always remember about these emotions. Unlike perhaps some other mental health conditions, these responses are rational. If you're not sometimes scared, then you're not paying attention. Right? Climate anxiety is a rational response to the situation that we are in. What we need to do, crucially, and this is one of the things we're trying to do in the Climate Majority Project, working with educators and others, what we need to do, crucially, is resource people to process these difficult emotions and help them to understand that if they're experiencing these emotions, that's because they're awake. And actually, more and more people are going to experience these emotions. If you, probably many of you like me, have had whatever, appalling climate nightmares or serious episodes of climate depression or climate anxiety. If you, like me, are in that category, you're one of the vanguard. There are going to be a lot of people following you into that condition. And this is super relevant to how we think and how we rethink mental health provision in this age. Just going to say it one more time because it's a bit counterintuitive. These kinds of conditions that more and more people are going to have are not pathological. They are rational responses which need to be supported and resourced. And the more they are, again, the better position we get into in terms of actually coping with these impacts. And that, again, is a form of adaptation, right? Adaptation is not just about building flood defenses. Adaptation is a whole social and inner phenomenon that we need to start to take seriously and resource a lot more. So that's one of the ways in which folks in this room and folks watching are peculiarly and spectacularly relevant to the times that we're in. I now want to mention another, which is even more widespread in general, which is true of all nurses, all healthcare professionals. Let's come at this in the following way. So we've seen this wonderful exhibition with, for example, PPE in it and questions about, look, can we reuse PPE more and so on and so forth. And these questions are important questions. Why are they important? They're important for obvious reasons, which have been discussed. But there's another reason that they're, in my opinion, even more important. And it's this. Healthcare professionals are role models. The closest we now have to a national religion in this country is arguably the National Health Service. Nurses are a profession with enormous public respect and love. The reason it really matters whether you have reusable PPE or not, or all the other things we've been talking about, is not, I would say, primarily because of its direct carbon and material impact. Of course that matters. Of course it adds up to a large amount. The real reason it matters is because people look to you, and you can actually leverage that potentially to have an enormous effect. If nurses and other healthcare professionals were to get systematic in their jobs, in their public personas, in saying, look, this climate crisis is a healthcare crisis. It's going to overwhelm us unless we get serious about it. You have an unprecedented and, to a large extent, I would say, still here, untapped potential power here. So a key message I want to bring you as nurses here this evening is, don't go away from this thinking something like, okay, yeah, so the climate crisis is really significant. I'd better do a bit more ethical consuming, eat a bit less meat, and on the quiet reuse some of my wipes more than I did before. Right? If you're going to reuse more wipes, don't do it on the quiet. Do it in the public gaze. Make a point of it. Make a story of it. Make this something which people cannot ignore within the profession and beyond the profession. Talk about it with your patients, for example. You know, why does this matter? Why are you doing it this way, etc. Right? And whenever possible, talk about it in any possible public forum. Because to say it again, probably your most important role in this crisis is not the direct role you can play in reducing carbon emissions. It's the indirect role you can play in being loved and respected healthcare professionals who are uniquely, and perhaps uniquely in the world, in this country, loved and respected and icons of care. And healthcare is, in its broadest sense, is fundamentally at risk and fundamentally potentially beneficial from the climate crisis, right? Going back to what I said a few minutes ago, think about the way that we can repurpose our understanding of care and of health in relation to mental health through rethinking where we stand in relation to this crisis. What is it to have a sane relationship to this world? What it is to have a sane relationship to this world at this point in history is sometimes to be worried and to be scared and to naturally move along with others to do something about it. And when you move along with others to do something about it, you potentially have profound power because of your role, because of the respect in which you're held, because of the way in which you are icons of care and people care about and love you. So my final point would be this. I run a thing called the Climate Majority Project. And what we try to do is to provide a rallying point and a network and an umbrella for all sorts of people in all sorts of different professions, places, etc., who are trying to do what they can to find their unique leverage on the crisis. And the most important thing about the Climate Majority Project is not what people like me are doing, the project bit. The most important part of it is the climate majority. And who are the climate majority? You are the climate majority. If you're in this room tonight, if you're watching this, you are very definitely part of the climate majority. What our theory of change is that what we need is nurses and doctors and playwrights and sports people and insurers and churchgoers and people wherever they are in their mode of life who have potential leverage and power in relation to that crisis. And it eventually means all of us, but some of us have more of it than others. To use that power, to use that leverage, to make the most difference that they can, that you can. And I would venture to say that when you look back at your life at the end of your life, and perhaps if you're fortunate enough to look back at your life at the end of your life with a child or some other young person who is important to you, they will be aware, and you will be aware, that it's highly likely that at this great time of testing, the most important thing in your life will be, what did you do when you knew? And make sure that that isn't just, I flew a bit less or whatever, right? That's great, but it's not the most important thing you can do. The most important thing that you can do is almost certainly be nurses addressing and role modeling how to respond in a time of crisis, where the whole future of the world, and that means the health of everybody and of all of us and of all of our descendants, is in the balance. And that is the sense in which you very really do mean the world. Thank you.